Hey, everybody, welcome. And without any further ado, I'm going to get right to it. Earlier today, Oakland Mayor Libby Schaaf and Oakland Councilmembers Treva Reid from District 7 and Loren Taylor from District 6, both mayoral candidates, I might add, had a press conference to discuss gun violence. And then Councilmember Cheng Tao is trying to schedule for council discussion gun violence. And I watched the press conferences with some dismay, and I wondered if what I was thinking was such that I was the only one thinking it. So I shared it with my friend who's running for Oakland mayor as well, and I urge you to support him, Derrick Soo. He's a 2022 Oakland mayoral candidate, and unhoused or homeless resident of Oakland who's been fighting a good fight to maintain a sane living, if you will, and establish perhaps the only large recognized camp in Oakland. So I turned to Derrick for his thoughts. But before Derrick and I, as they say, chop it up, I want to play for you all at least part of the 35-minute press conference you may not have seen or saw. It is right here. And actually, I'll put us up over to the side like so. Pretty neat, huh? And here is Oakland Mayor Libby Schaaf and the press conference. Right here. It's supposed to come on and play, but let's do this. Interesting. There.
Okay, well, thank you for everyone for showing up on short notice. We did want to take a moment to bring some people together to address the serious violence that we've seen in our city.
Oh, I have to note one thing, folks. I was not notified by the mayor's office about this press conference. Actually, a friend of mine did. The mayor has taken to having her staff, not tell me about press conferences for reasons best known to her. But this was picked up automatically by Oakland News Now, and my algorithms installed so that it's posted anyway, and we don't miss the news. So once again, the mayor lost out as I was sharing them with my mom, who I'm visiting here in Detroit. She says, "Why does Libby do that?" And I said, "I don't know." So, but she has her reasons. But the bottom line is, you can't stop a good news media network that's tech-based. So, with all that blowhardism out of me, we continue with the press conference here.
Recently. And so today, we brought together Mayor Schaaf, Councilmembers Treva Reid, and Councilmember Loren Taylor. And also on the line joining us is Officer Kim Armstead to answer any questions about specific incidents. But first, we're going to hear from Mayor Schaaf and to address these concerns and some proposals going forward.
Thank you, Justin. I know I join all Oaklanders in decrying the recent spate of gun violence in our city, the unacceptable and tragic loss of life, especially of innocent children, good Samaritans, and people who had dedicated their professional careers to keeping others safe, as well as supporting a free press. Every one of the losses and harms done by violence hurts our entire community, whether well publicized or not. We in Oakland believe in a comprehensive and effective approach to ending gun violence. And while we are not backing down whatsoever in our historic investments in prevention, as well as a non-police response option called MACRO, we must address police staffing shortages, and that is what we will do. We made a promise to Oakland voters when we asked them to pass Measure Z, the safety and services measure that provides additional resources for both prevention programs and police presence. And we will be bringing to the City Council a revised hiring plan to show voters we will keep that promise. that we will not only budget a police department over 678 officers, but in fact maintain those minimal staffing levels. We also will be presenting an analysis to make the case to reverse the cuts that are planned for just 8 months from now. That analysis will make the case that additional police staffing is needed in the wake of this violence spree. We know what has worked in the past. We know that ceasefire, which is a coordinated and holistic effort that starts with community communication, analysis of who in fact specifically is driving crime, the offer of services and support. But then when those messages and services are not accepted, enforcement, that punishment, that consequence must be swift and certain. And we need adequate staffing to perform that aspect of ceasefire that we know has worked in the past. There is nothing progressive about unbridled gun violence. This is what Oaklanders want, a comprehensive and effective approach to safety, and that includes adequate police staffing. I want to acknowledge that this press conference was called on short notice. I did also invite a Councilmember Sheng Tao, who was interested in participating but unable to, and is going to also look forward to seeing this analysis. And I invite you to also reach out to her to see her comments on this plan going forward. With that, I introduce a council member from District 7, Deep East Oakland, a part of our city that has been disproportionately impacted by gun violence, not just this year, but every year. And that is Councilmember Treva Reid. Treva.
Thank you, Mayor Schaaf. You know, it's heartbreaking and it's even traumatizing to hear of how many lives have been lost to violence and gun violence. It has gripped our community. And as you shared in East Oakland, where we feel the weight of the trauma of losing more than half of those whose lives have been lost. It's left many in our community traumatized with fear. Our businesses, our community are grappling to understand how they will get through as we come in these remaining days of the years. And so, yes, we must increase our efforts deeply to keep us safe, protected, and at peace. And we can and must have adequate public safety resources and a rapid response as we make those deeper investments that you mentioned in violence prevention strategies, ceasefire, macro, as we also work to those deeper issues of systemic racism that we know contribute to high crime impacts, as we have declared the public health crisis in our city and our county. It is okay for us to be safe and secure in our neighborhoods, at parks, at concerts, at gas stations, walking, running, sitting, coming to and from in our city. And that means that we must have the adequate resources and the staffing, as well as community safety officers to deliver on keeping us protected in our city. Our community needs to know, and they need to see that we are committed in action with investing deeply and restoring those rapid response officers that we lost and have been traumatized in not having that response of adequate dispatching and officers who can meet the needs of those who are calling and re-traumatize when they do not have a response back. It is time for us to show up in ways that our community can depend and trust that we are moving forward in these efforts as we reimagine public safety. So we talked about the things that were frozen, and I certainly would love to see how we are going to advance this plan that restores our sworn personnel positions for a 911 rapid response, that increases the measure of presence that our community is demanding, that we not lose more officers, that we maintain the minimum of our sworn office personnel as we work to build those staffing levels back up. In East Oakland, we have demanded more, not less resources and response. And we look forward to working with you on that plan that will deliver for our community and all of us citywide that feels the impact of this increased rise of violence. I would like to also welcome our council member from District 6, Councilmember Loren Taylor, who also serves East Oakland.
Thank you, Councilmember Reid, Mayor Schaaf. As a child, my introduction to gun violence was when my aunt was shot in the face, an innocent bystander of a drive-by shooting. Since that day, I have unfortunately known how traumatic and helpless we can feel when we are victims of and traumatized by violence on our streets. This is something that no Oaklander should have to live with, should settle for. And so the 127 lives that have been lost so far this year are devastating to all of us, whether we are directly related to those who are impacted or not. And so that's why I'm glad to see more of a groundswell of support for our officers and our resources that will support safer communities alongside with the investments that we are making to address root causes of violence, the crime that's on our street. We do have an attrition problem that we can't ignore. We have to demonstrate our support for those officers who are sacrificing daily to keep our community safe, while at the same time investing in replenishing the ranks that exist. And so it requires a both-and solution for multiple dimensions. And I look forward to continued partnership with my council colleagues, with city administration, the mayor's office, and community members in bringing forward the solutions that will continue to keep our safe, and not just getting a headline, but sustaining those investments. It's also critical to acknowledge that we have had a number of community members really step up in the past several weeks, months, to help and to contribute. And we are grateful for that partnership. We are grateful for our interagency partners from the county level, the state level, and the federal level that we've been in conversation with as well on how we can get on top of what's happening here in our city. We must continue to keep our community safe. I know I want my aunt and my grandparents to be able to walk in the city without fear of something happening, without a sense of helplessness that when they call OPD, when they call 911, questioning whether or not a response will come. That is why we must continue to invest in both in the prevention, in the deterrence, the immediate response, and the investigations that are so critical to keeping our community safe. With that, it is my pleasure to continue fighting with you and for you in keeping Oakland safe. And I believe now we have, are we opening it up to questions from the audience? So we'll turn it over to Justin Burton to facilitate question and answer.
Thank you, Councilmember Taylor. Before we do that, just want, Mayor, one more time, was there any closing remarks before we get into that? Okay.
Well,
So I can read the chats, or I can have you all raise hands. We can do both.
And Justin, we cannot see the chat. So if there are questions in the chat, let us know.
wow.
Not seeing any so far. Oh, sorry. From KGO, can you give more specifics on your proposal?
I want to stop it right there. Derrick, What are your thoughts about what you just heard, the problem and the solutions? I mean, I have a lot, you know.
They don't know what the problem is. They don't know where the problem's coming from. So how can you deal with anything when you don't know where the problem begins? The problem begins with the commuting criminals, as that's what I called them. And this has been going on, and it's been growing in Oakland and around the Bay Area for a number of years. I was a victim early on back in 2014 when I first came out. I was attacked, and they were trying to kill me with a baseball bat. This scar right here, that's the remains of 4 stitches where they split me open. I went Highland Hospital, 4 stitches to close that up. So anyway, these criminals, these commuter criminals, they don't go get hotel rooms. They may stay with a friend locally, kind of like with Ursi Joyner. That criminal was a local rapper from Vallejo. His accomplices were apprehended, 2 in Sacramento County, and then 1 in, they had an extradition in Texas, but he's from another state. But anyway, these are commuter criminals that I'm talking about. And what we've been seeing here in Oakland with the flash mobs, a lot of these folks are instigating from out of town, bringing in a lot of locals. Say, hey, they're going to be doing this anyway. Let's go grab some stuff. And then that's what's happening. And so it's these commuter criminals that come in, and also they're taking advantage of a situation that no city can possibly avoid, and that's dealing with the homeless situation right now because of the previous shelter in place. The previous shelter in place allowed Oakland's homeless situation to pre-COVID. We were averaging 140 homeless camps throughout the city of Oakland on any given day pre-COVID. Once COVID hit and shelter in place was uh, the order of the day, that allowed for homeless camps to pop up like mushrooms all over town. And at one point, in one of my city meetings that I was with, they were talking about 310 homeless camps throughout Oakland that they couldn't do anything with. And this creates a problem because the criminals know how to take advantage of that situation, because we have a criminal element at one of the large homeless camps here, which is very visible in Oakland, and they're all over. And these criminals, they establish a shelter in these homeless camps, and they protect them by all means. In other words, they'll kill people, and they have killed people. You hear about shootings at a lot of these camps. That's somebody standing up to them, and they just shot them dead. And so that happens in a lot of camps here. It's been I've had four attempts on my life in the middle of the night where people have come in through my door to murder me. And if it wasn't for my weapon, you know, I wouldn't be here today. And so this street violence is very real. Very violent gangs are taking over and controlling a lot of homeless camps. In fact, you were advised about what was going on a few months ago here at my camp, where I was freaking out on stuff, and because I was overwhelmed with the situation. And so with that, by going back to a lot of things that I learned when I worked for the federal government, I worked for the Department of Defense. I was one of the first generation that came in under George H.W. Bush as the first generation of counterterrorists that were ununiformed. I was the first generation of that. And the agency that I work for, information is slowly trickling out. A lot of that happened by leakage in the NSA DOD called Eric Snowden, and information about some of my activities was revealed in that. So that put my life in danger. But in terms of counterterrorism, what's going on in Oakland is terrorism. I'm an expert on this. I've defended and protected this camp 4 different occasions from gunfire and overwhelming numbers. At one point, I had a 17-1 advantage. They had the advantage on me. I was the one, and there were 17 of them. So, and I'm still here. So I think I know what I'm doing in terms of dealing with criminals and terrorists. Oakland hasn't a clue as to where they're at. Well, I can point them out all over Oakland. And I've worked with some of the local officers in dealing with some of those issues of recent, and now they're gone. All of those gang members are gone from this encampment right now. And they've been gone for about 3 weeks. So when they come back, I can start up what we've been doing, and it really disrupts. It puts a big disruption into their plan. Also, it disrupts them hiding because now they know that they're seen and that police know who they are.
If you become mayor of Oakland, how would you deal with this problem?
Number one, we need more law enforcement, more community guards. I would say one of the plans that I have is very controversial, but it works. It's effective. It's worked in many states that had a huge crime problem like this, and it's called having a CCW, concealed carry weapons permit. And so what we're going to do, I'm talking about a program where citizens who want to get a CCW permit and be able to carry a weapon legally can train alongside police officers for a fee. And in the event that in the future that they do want to join Oakland Police Department, their fees that they paid to get their CCW is fully refunded, and then they get the advantage of not having to go through another academy or training again because they've already completed that. And in fact, they probably have gone on and received more training than the basic Oakland police officer, because that's some of the requirements with a CCW. There's going to be a full background check, FBI background check, mental check, which is what I had to do to get my CCW. I'm still an active federal firearms license concealed carry weapon person, and so I can carry pretty much with there are some limitations where I can't carry, and that's completely fine with me. I have no issue with where I can't carry. But when I was actually working for the government, I would actually get on the plane with my gun on my hip. But there's a special procedure for me to board that plane, special ticket. So it's very different.
Hey, has the city ever talked to you about ideas like this? Because it's a great idea. One thing that bothers me about the way the city is looking at it, if they are, is first of all, I read on Nextdoor a lot of accounts of people, like there's a lady today whose name I'm not going to mention, but she's over 65. She was at BART, and what she describes as a 20-something, I guess, Latino by appearance woman, Latina, came up and hit her in the face twice. And she's got a walker and her bag. And BART station aides came to her help, and as did BART police. But they said, well, you have to call Oakland police. So they got into this whole jurisdictional thing. And yet the person that did it punched her twice. The lady asks, she writes that she asked, why are you hitting me? She didn't answer. She just took off with some older man. And as improbable as that sounds, I also see another report, I believe, also on Nextdoor, as a fellow at 29th Street in downtown. It's a picture of him. He was got blood on his face. He called the police, but someone just out of the blue came up and attacked him. And so you can't solve the problem just by restoring our staffing. To me, it sounds like it's a gigantic social cultural problem in Oakland that's beyond traditional means of resolution. Your thoughts?
Yeah. Well, here are my thoughts. Is that Oakland is actually a very gentle town in terms of the residents. They don't like hurting people, even with words. But now we have an element that's come into Oakland and is disrupting all of that. And so the gentle folks are going to have to get to a point where they have to say enough is enough, and then start arming themselves with perhaps not the olden days with torches and pitchforks, but perhaps something like this, pepper spray, OC spray. You can get this, over the counter. It's about $13.
We have those here.
Yeah. And these work very effectively. It's a chemical eye poking. And it disrupts them. It takes a little bit of time on somebody with a gun. Obviously, this is not going to stop them. But for something like with the lady there, unfortunately being on a walker, this would not be accessible to her, unfortunately. In the event that he got close and she had a small hand spike, because there's also small hand spikes that you can hit the person in the face and the eyes, take the spike to the eyes, cheekbones, do some sort of damage. At that point, all bets are off, and you have to stop being nice, because that's where I drew the line decades ago at being nice. And when somebody struck out at me, I retaliated. And we have to retaliate. And trying to buy our way out of this by hiring more police. The downside of police, the realistic part is that they're not going to be there to help you when you really need them. They're just there to fill out the paperwork and the toe tag.
Yeah.
Bottom line, that's it. They're not there to protect you, because when they show up, it's at least 8 minutes away. A criminal's going to do a whole lot of damage in 8 minutes and get away. And so you have to be responsible as your first responder, your own first responder. Something as simple as the OC spray, key spike on your set of keys kept in your hands or wrapped in your hands. Martial arts training, as you and a lot of folks know, I'm a triple master in martial arts. So I've been highly skilled since I was 12 years old, and just gotten better since then. And that's what carried me through a lot of my career also, my mixed martial arts. I didn't always have a weapon that I used, but here in Oakland, we have to change how the criminals view Oakland, because they see Oakland as weak, where we're a city talking about getting rid of the police. This is exactly what happens when you start talking about defunding the police. because the criminals come in. They hear about defunding because that's what they heard from San Francisco. That's what they heard from San Jose. That's what they heard from Oakland. Guess who's getting hit the hardest?
Yeah, Oakland.
These
Yeah,
three same cities.
yeah, and has a national reputation on YouTube. There's a couple of videos by a guy, Nick's last name, and he's talking
Yeah,
about
Nick Johnson. Yeah, I saw him last night. He's an idiot, but he is telling the truth though on some parts. It's half truth, but he doesn't really know the stories behind the areas that he went into. I know the stories behind every one of those zones that he talks about.
Not to take off about too much, but do you think that he's being paid to say that because he just came out of town to make these videos? He makes these videos all over, but it seems like with Oakland, this is the second time he's done this. He has a particular message, and I keep thinking it wouldn't surprise me if someone right wing was paying him to send out a message that continues this kind of pattern of Oakland being used as kind of the poster child for left wing failure. What are your thoughts?
And he, that's exactly what he's doing. And he's doing that to the entire state of California, and especially Oakland and San Francisco, because we are ground zero on this on the West Coast. Los Angeles has a huge problem also, but Oakland is a very, very liberal, progressive city, and the right wing hates that because you saw the battles that Mayor Schaaf had with POTUS 45, and he's just playing on that. He's doing that just to trash the city some more.
Hey, coming back to the council and the solutions, I've been a big proponent of AB 464, and what I'm dismayed about, Derrick, is that we haven't used it, which would apply tax increment financing zones to then allow that money to be used by small business. Small business could use it to buy security guards, Head Start programs. I mean, I really beg people to use it, and I was screaming about this, and I was screaming about its the father of the bill, which was SB 628 Beal, which actually, out of all the people I talked to about using it, only one person listened to me. Out of all the council members I talked to about using, including, you name it, it's on video too. Only one person listened to me regarding using it, and that one person was Dave Cavall. And that's how we wound up using what's SB 293 Skinner, which is an offshoot of it that he had worked with Nancy Skinner. But all that came out of my phone meeting with him, April 4th of 2017, because he swore up and down, you said you can't use public money for stadiums anymore. And I said, actually, you can here. And here's the thing. Of all the people, they say, okay, they use it for Howard Terminal. Then the people in East Oakland say, oh, you're using tax increment financing for this white establishment thing, and you're not helping us. And yet here we are, okay, with legislation on the table, specifically designed for small business by Barbara Bobby Lopez, signed into law by Gavin Newsom 4 months ago, to allow tax increment financing to be used to use our property tax money to help specifically small businesses, not only within the zone that's designated, but within wherever the city organization through its infrastructure financing plan designates it to go. Complete freedom, right? And yet we do nothing.
Mm-hmm.
Nothing. What say you help us out of this?
Well, my position on Howard Terminal. Yeah, it's I prefer to keep it as part of an.
Howard Terminal aside, I'm just talking about the tool of tax increment financing.
The TIF.
Yeah, because they complain about it using it. I'm saying, look, you can use it too, right? In other words, stop complaining about how somebody else used it. Put them to work. We have all these council members; they've done nothing, and they're running for mayor.
Yeah, and they don't know a lot of the different programs. They have no idea about a lot of the census-based programs, HCD grants. writers, HCD or grant writers, which city of Oakland lacks. And that's why city of Oakland hasn't been getting HCD grant monies for a lot of these different low income programs throughout Oakland. And but yet we have other agencies in Alameda County going after those same dollars that Oakland should have been going after.
Wow. Something else. Hey, so I promised I wasn't going to hold you long. What's the next step for us in all this, and how much worse is it going to get before it gets better? It just doesn't seem like it's getting any better at all.
Until Oakland starts acknowledging that we need to get more of these community land trust tiny home villages put in place so that we can actually put people safely into these co-governed tiny home villages safely with services, and then that starts forcing into the public eye the criminal element that are hiding in plain sight throughout Oakland in the homeless camp, because they're the ones that are going to refuse housing of any form, period. And because they actually have a house here. Some of them, my next door neighbor here, even though he's homeless, he does some things here in Oakland that I don't agree with. He's in possession of a gun, but the sad part, the reason why I have to tolerate that, because the captain up here at the Eastmont Mall told me you need to start getting along with some of these people since they're living next to you and they have guns. You have to. And I looked at the captain and I looked, really? You've got to be kidding. You wouldn't mind having your criminal next door neighbor who's a felon in possession of a gun living next door to you. Now, and this guy used to pop his gun off all the time until he ran out of bullets. And but it's that kind of mentality at the police department. I'm trying to help them out. I'm trying to help the neighborhood out, getting rid of some of the guns on the streets, because at one point we had probably about 30 illegal guns down here. Mine was the only legal one down here.
Hey, so
it's a lot of ghost guns. There's a lot of stolen guns out here, and it's just mind-boggling that anybody just can leave here and within 30 minutes come back armed.
That's right. Hey, here's an idea that I touted. Some people think I'm laughing when I say it, but I'm not laughing. But I really believe we should actually formalize I call it the Batman program. And the idea basically is to encourage vigilantism. And I say that because a lot of the crimes that we're talking about, like the ones that are reported on Nextdoor, they're crimes that, by my estimation, would take 5,000 police officers around the city to have any chance of stopping. And we don't have the budget for that, or maybe more, because they occur randomly, out of the blue, someone next to you, and because no one is incentivized to jump in, what happens is that person gets away with it. Now, I know the counter would be somebody would say, well, wait a minute, wasn't the fellow that was shot on Grand Avenue, wasn't that a vigilante attempt? And my answer would be, it sounds like it. But my point is, I think what I'm saying is that our vigilante force would be equipped, bulletproof vests. They would have enough protection with them, and instead of guidelines, they'd be registered. What do you think about that idea?
And that's something that I would endorse. A community neighborhood guard is how I would label them. Just like we have armed guards, they would carry a guard card, just like the armed guards for banks or any of the armored car services with a gun. that would be the same type of requirement that I would be looking at. Guard card, once they have a CCW, CCW allows them to be able to carry it on them at all times, even when they're not working in their neighborhood on a duty or a shift, if they were an official guard for the neighborhood. But one of the nice things about having a CCW is that you have eyes, a set of eyes. You have somebody who can protect themselves in the event they have to intervene. They can stop a lot of these crimes before a person can even dial their phone. And so that's the kind of intervention that we really truly need to bring into Oakland and the Bay Area itself. We really have to start looking out for each other, and depending on a police force which is antiquated and can never have the numbers that any city will ever need, because we can't afford to keep paying them, because obviously salaries go up, the cost of their equipment goes up, their benefits goes up, and so trying to keep those numbers with so many financial factors that are negative, we do have to look at reimagining how we protect our community. And this is one of the ways that we start reimagining law enforcement in a community like Oakland. We have community neighborhood guards, and they have CCWs where they can carry a weapon on them at all times. I was, in fact, I was one of the people who pitched this back in the early 2000s, because in my neighborhood, when I lived in the Grand Lake area, we had a ring of three males that were going around with guns and robbing people. In fact, they nearly got me. If it wasn't for one, I had my pit bull and I turned her loose on them, and I also had my hand on my weapon. They took off. So these are the kind of things that people, if they have a CCW and they're of good character, they can pass a background check. We want them armed because this stops crime. It's been proven in Florida. You know, I remember early on back when CCWs were first issued to the seniors in Florida. There was a robbery, and next thing you know, the robber turned around and there were 10 seniors with guns drawn on him. And that dropped crime 50% in the state within a year. And that was during the 90s. I remember that I was laughing because there were so many criminals who never expected Granny to pull out, you know, a big handgun at the donut shop. And that's the kind of thing that we need to start looking at, because these are commuter criminals. They're not all here in Oakland or neighboring cities. They commute from outside the area. And so we have to be aware that a lot of this is coming in from outside because of the bad press that the Bay Area and Oakland get about defunding the police. So people are under the impression that the police are weakening, and then they hear stories on the news that police officers are leaving left and right. That's not going to help anything here in the coming days also.
That's right. Hey, Stephen Leong says, we also need apprenticeships to bring more skills to Oaklanders, update the zoning code on the book. I think that's a great idea. How about you?
I absolutely agree with that, because when my days in high school or even middle school, you were being trained for an apprenticeship program in a trade, whether it be wood shop, metal shop, drafting, print shop. I mean, there was all sorts of things. And by the time you left high school, you were able to go into an apprenticeship program because you had all the basic skills that were required. And that worked for everybody. That was an equalizer for people of color. That was the great equalizer there. And then all of a sudden, that was taken away. And now people of color are highly disadvantaged because they don't have that early start to see if that's something that could really steer them into a good career.
I hate to say this, but one big negative of base closures is the reduction of jobs that would call for that kind of skill. And
Yep.
for example, when I was at Skyline High School, Skyline was a regional occupational center. This was 1978 to 1980, 77.
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
I class of 80. I took drafting courses, and my teacher, Eugene Rockman, got me a job for 2 summers working for M. Rosenblatt and Son Naval Architects and Marine Engineers. And I learned ship checking. And what ship, you go on the ship and you take a batch of existing drawings with you. And the idea is to see if the drawings, if the piping in a certain section matches the drawings, and where they don't, your job is basically to redraw or adjust the drawings to match what's there, so that future people who need to go on and make adjustments know what to do based on what's on those drawings. Because what happens is you get into a situation where you're at sea and you need to make adjustments to the drawings and pipes, so that they may be adjusted while they're in dock, but the drawings updates aren't always made because they happen on a fly. Skills like that. When we close bases, we lose those. And now maybe there's a way, but I think, now as I think about the Port of Oakland, it sounds like there's a pipeline there. But the bottom line is, details aside, we do need to start thinking about non-tech positions, or I should say digital tech positions, I should say, because if you think about it, shop and everything is a kind of a tech job. It is technical in its way. But I think that's absolutely another something we need to work on and focus. And then Linda C says, yes, we need the community to come together. And I think Derrick couldn't have said it better. Hey, Derrick, closing thoughts?
Well, I will listen in to see what Libby has to say in the coming days. LeRon Armstrong, he has a tough job. I don't envy him. But I've certainly tried to make him aware of where a lot of this crime is coming from. It's coming from out of Oakland, and it's organized, as we've seen, and they just hit.
As the guy who's running for mayor, when are we going to see your plan up online? We can go to URL and check it out.
That's I'm working on that right now. Been so busy with a lot of different projects. Also, I'm working very hard getting a lot of people off the streets, getting them into permanent shelter housing through the different programs that are currently available through Project Home Key, Project Room Key, Operation Home Base. We also have programs from Abode, which is that we're working with. So there's a lot of good permanent housing programs. We've been able to take a pre-COVID population of this camp of 32, and now with all the different housing programs, I've been able to bring the camp population to under 12. We are pretty close to getting one more housed here this week through a special program. But these are our programs that are specialized because some of these folks have very unique needs. The one that we're working real closely with, it's a hospice situation. And so once he goes into hospice, we know what that is. But we're trying to make the best of it. And then another one, we're trying to be able to get her qualified for a housing program by getting her detox. And so making sure that she sticks to the program that she's been assigned so that she qualifies for permanent housing. And she's a senior.
Hey, is there an email or number the person can reach out to you if they want to hear more about your candidacy for mayor?
Oh, sure. They can reach me on email at Soo Derrick, SOO DERRICK, all one word,
SOODERRIC.
DERRICK at yahoo.com.
So Derrick, there it is, folks. Sue Derrick at yahoo.com. Derrick,
All righty.
stick around to the backstage for a second. Hey, everybody, thanks for joining us. Good audience, and thank you for the comments. Subscribe to Zinning62, bookmark oaklandnewsnow.com. Support this man for mayor. He's a unique candidate. Oakland needs a different cut of elected official than we've had to deal with a unique problem. This man's right there at ground zero dealing with it. Reach out to him. Remember, you have ranked choice voting. You got 3 you can vote for, regardless of whether it's 1, 2, or 3. Make him one of those. We'll be back. That ends this broadcast. Stick around in the background.